there is a bit of internal sadness in the interest of full disclosure for me. I think so much of Mike Aresco, he knew the job was going to be difficult when he took it, but for it to be this untenable so quickly on so many fronts, it's been as soon as you put out one fire, here comes another one, and then another. And I mean, it's one thing after another. But this one, I don't know how you survive this, and maybe you can explain to me how he does. But let's start first and foremost with the reasons for it. Bottom line, economics, correct?
I think obviously money plays a role in everything, and it's been about a decade in the making. Really, the only reason for the Catholic schools to ever stay with the all-sport schools was because of money and the idea that to walk away from the television contract that you can get from being a part of a league that plays, Division I football, it just doesn't make any sense. So they stayed even though they didn't like where the league was headed. I don't think anybody within the league liked where the league was headed. My colleague and your friend Dennis Dodd, CBS.com, reported last week that the new television contract that Mike Aresco is trying to negotiate could be worth as little as $60 million annually, which could be worth as little as $1.1 million, maybe even less, to the basketball-only schools. And I think at that point, the eyes were opened, and they said, if the only reason we're dealing with all this stuff we don't want to deal with, this ever-changing league that doesn't have much in common with us anymore, is because of money, and now we realize the money's not going to be there, why don't we look at seriously breaking away? And I think that combined with emotions has led us to this point. Mike right now is scrambling. He's trying to do anything he can to get the basketball-only schools to hold off and perhaps hold on. But everything I'm being told is that barring something very, very surprising at this point and bordering on a miracle, the basketball schools are going to break away, and I think the bottom line, I talked to somebody from one of those schools this morning, and he said, they just assume they're going to have to do it anyway someday, and they're just ready to get on and get on with it.
Is the A-10 a landing spot for some? Would the ACC be a landing spot for others? What do you think?
No, I don't think it goes that direction. There was a report earlier this week that the Atlantic 10 would love to take the 7 basketball-only schools into their league, and my reaction to that was, of course they would. But if you look at the history of this, the small doesn't eat the big eats the small. So the Atlantic 10 should make that phone call. But the more likely scenario is that the 7 Big East schools that are breaking away will offer invitations to Dayton and a Xavier and a Creighton and a Butler. And a St. Louis, and try to get to a 12-team league. A VCU would be another consideration.
A glorified, like a glorified Missouri Valley? Is that,
well, I think what you would hope if you're the 7 Catholic schools is that you're a much better version of the Atlantic 10.
Yeah,
a much better version of the Missouri Valley.
Right.
You would have Georgetown, Marquette, St. John's, Providence, DePaul, some traditionally rich schools, and then you add a Butler, a Creighton, and get to 12 schools and go get as much money from a TV contract as you can get. That's a really solid basketball league. I think the Catholic schools, assuming that this is the way it goes, and it will go this way, barring some change of plan, they're going to land in a spot where I think they feel more comfortable. They might not make as much money from television, but they'll be in a more comfortable situation. The schools that should be really concerned right now, the Cincinnati, Connecticut, South Florida, Central Florida, Memphis, Temple, these schools that were getting ready to be a part of something that they thought was going to be nice, and now very clearly isn't going to be anything close to that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've got to believe if those 7 schools aren't looking to latch on for basketball only in either the ACC or the A-10 or something like that, certainly the football schools that are left, that's the real scramble for the commissioner, Mike Aresco, is that he's got to do something to fend off anyone coming after those guys, and there'll be plenty of them, whether it's Cincinnati, whatever's left, they're going to be looking to go elsewhere. And this whole deal that's going down right now between Maryland and the ACC as it relates to possible courtroom proceedings to get out of having to pay a $60 million plus exit fee, I mean, we're going to turn this thing into the wild, wild west, it seems. to get to 4 super conferences in football really, really soon, if that happens.
And I do think we're headed that way. I mean, Mike Aresco's got the same problem, just on a different level than Mike Tranghese once had, and after him, John Marinado, which is you're at the bottom of the big school leagues. And so anytime the ACC, the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the SEC are going to take turns picking apart, ACC schools or Big East schools. And then when the ACC needs to replace what they just lost, they're coming to the Big East to get that. And so I think most people think that at some point, the Big Ten is going to go grab 2 more ACC schools, or the SEC is going to grab 2 more ACC schools, or the Big 12 is going to grab 2 more. And then the ACC is going to say, okay, come on with us, Cincinnati, come on, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Eventually, the ACC is going to look a lot like the old Big East, and the old Big East is not going to exist. And then and it's possible, even further down the road, that the ACC doesn't exist as well. If the idea is that eventually, whether it's in 2 years, 5 years, 10, we're going to have 4 big conferences and nothing else, I'd put my money on that. It's just a matter, I think, at this point, of when, not if.
Gary, when do you think we'll know for sure that this has happened? How much time does Mike Aresco as commissioner have to maybe circle the wagons and keep this breakup from happening?
Well, I think there was a time where the Catholic schools were ready to announce, either today or tomorrow. I think a lot of that had to do with they just got their minds made up. They met with Aresco on Sunday. He was not able to, in that meeting, convince them to turn around, at which point they decided to move forward. He's scrambling again, but, I was talking to somebody earlier today, a source within one of the Big East schools, and this person told me, what's Mike going to be able to tell these guys tomorrow that he couldn't tell them this past Sunday? And assuming that's the issue, I was told to expect an announcement of some sort next week. Again, unless Aresco can bring some miracle television contract, out of thin air, something that nobody thinks is possible at this point, then it's headed this direction. And a formal announcement, I would say early next week seems most likely.